Good afternoon, everybody. Um, it's so nice to see everybody here. A lot of people that are DevOps engineers, aspiring DevOps engineers, even in other engineering fields as well. It's nice to see everybody. Okay, so today we're going to be having a very short chat. It's nothing too technical, right? So I'm going to be talking about what DevOps is in 2023, the trends that are coming up in 2023, the different aspects of DevOps, certifications and their relevance, the layoffs that has been happening, and, if you're new into the field, how you can break into the market, and you do a couple of all these things. But like Favor said, it's going to be very, very conversational. So feel free to stop me at any point. If you have comments, questions, maybe anything you'd like to draw my attention to, you can just pop it in the chat or just raise your hands. But if you wanted to wait till the end of the conversation, that's okay as well. Okay, I'm just going to get right to it. So like Faber said, I'm currently a Kubernetes engineer at North Cloud. And before now, I've had experience both as a DevOps engineer and what you would call a site reliability engineer. So to an extent, I've had a taste of, what these different aspects are and, what it entails and all of that, right? So I wouldn't say I speak from a place of profound experience, but I would say that to an extent, I've tasted of this world, these different aspects. And yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so first, I want to call our attention to three things. There are like three major things that I've noticed over time that shapes how trends generally, not only DevOps now. This can apply to software engineering or whatever, right? There are three major trends or three major factors that I know that applies to these things, right? Don't forget this is a chat, so feel free to stop me at any point, right? And the first one is like technological advances and their adoption, right? People build new things every day. There are different tools that are coming out every day, right? There are new things that are coming out every day. And then what happens when you build these things and then people don't adopt it? Take, for example, I used to live in Nigeria, and I remember there was this time where Go My Way was very popular. I don't know if anybody knows Go My Way, where um, it's like a low scale Uber. Then I think Uber was not so popular. So it's more like maybe if you're working on the mainland and you're working on the mainland, you're living on the island, or you're living on the mainland, you're working on the island, and you don't want to have to spend so much going and having to look for a bus or whatever, and then you just connect to an app and then you go with people. Now at the time when that came up, it was very, very good. A lot of people used it. But after some time, it packed off, not because they didn't have a sustainable business in quote, but like everything that has to do with technology, one major factor that eventually affects if this thing is going to, stay for a while or not is adoption. And as DevOps engineers or aspiring DevOps engineers, as the case may be, there are new tools coming out every single day, right? As much as you want to be on top of your game, there are so many tools that might be shiny now, might be sparkling now, but does not necessarily mean that it will stand the test of time, right? Does not necessarily mean that, companies, organizations would adopt these tools. And then at the end of the day, what then happens if you've spent years learning these things, right? So that's like the first part, right? Technological advances. Then the second one is like industry trends. So take, for example, recently there's been this rave about ChatGPT, and I think the last office hours as well, someone came to speak about ChatGPT and all the good things it can do and all of that, right? Is industry trends. It just came out of nowhere, and people have been seeing a lot of tweets and articles talking about, oh, ChatGPT is going to take your job. It's going to replace DevOps engineers, it's going to replace software engineers, and things like that. But in a sense, maybe not, or maybe I don't know. But industry trends would always affect how all these things play out at the end of the day. And then the third major factor is organizational needs. Now, there has been rise of different technologies that come out, but then there are some organizations that even till this day, till the way Kubernetes is so widespread. There are so many organizations that till now, they have still not adopted Kubernetes and they're still using their monolith applications. You can't blame them. But then what do you do if you're a DevOps engineer and you're working at such a company? So that's more like what our chat today is going to be focused on, right? How you as a DevOps engineer can more like carve a niche for yourself, how you can be relevant, because a lot of things are coming up, a lot of tools, a lot of trends, even people that are just trying to break into the market don't even know where to start, right? So that's like kind of the things I want to talk about today. Just touch on it briefly here and there, right? Okay. So the first thing is that very recently, there has been what's the word now? You would find many different what they call it, aspects of DevOps. So it doesn't cut it anymore to just say I'm a DevOps engineer. Maybe in 2023, people might still take it a bit seriously, but with the way things are going, I'm speculating that 2024, 2025, it won't cut it anymore to just say, oh, I'm a DevOps engineer. Why? Because there are a lot of different aspects that are coming up on a daily, and you need to carve a niche for yourself. Like, that's the summary of everything. Now, I introduced myself. I said I'm a Kubernetes engineer. I started off as a DevOps engineer, right? But that's not even the one aspect that there is. There are a lot. You hear people say, oh, I'm a pipeline engineer, oh, I'm a CI/CD engineer, oh, I'm a DevSecOps engineer. We'll still talk about some of these things, but that just goes to say that you have to DevOps engineering, in quotes, as what you know it to be, is not just something that people will just do because, or maybe as a software engineer, you're not really feeling the vibe, and then you just want to transition into the next big tech thing, and then DevOps is there, and then you just go into DevOps. That's not going to cut it anymore if you still want to stay relevant, right? So there are so many different aspects. I'm going to talk about a few that I've seen that would stand the test of time, in quotes, right, that would still remain beyond 2023. I'm going to talk about a few of them. I think about 4 or 5 of them. Yeah, about 4 or 5 of these in-demand skills, as what you may call it, as opposed to just saying I'm a DevOps engineer. Right? We'll talk about them. But then, irrespective of all these different aspects, right, or what you would, please, if you have any questions, you can pop it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I would attend to it, or we could wait till after I'm done and then we can have a chat about it. So, but whichever works for you. So there are like some baselines that has to be there if you're going to be a DevOps engineer, right? At my previous company, there used to be a lot of interns. They used to hire a lot of interns. And then one thing I noticed with these people is that they come in, some of them with different backgrounds, software engineers, some just different backgrounds. Some have not even been in tech at all. And then they come into DevOps because they just assume that, oh no, it's DevOps now. You just be deploying applications. And then when they come and they see the amount of work that needs to be done, and they see that they need to learn programming, in some cases, it becomes a problem, right? They are not able to pull through, or after maybe 2 months, they just drop out because they can't keep up, right? I see a lot of that happen, not even in my previous company alone. I see a lot of that happen, and I see a lot of people, come on Twitter or LinkedIn, and, they say, oh, praise, pop me messages and say, oh, I will need you to coach me, I will need you to mentor me, or, I'm trying to break into the space, what can I do? And it's beautiful, right? But then you notice that this same person that came with so much enthusiasm might say, oh, go and take this course or go and read this blog. And then I ask you to read an article and you don't come back until 3 weeks later because I thought it was supposed to be very easy. Spoiler alert, it's not, right? And I know that there are seniors on this call, juniors, different categories of people. So yeah, it's up for discussion, right? But at the end of the day, irrespective of whatever aspect of DevOps there is or there will be, there are still some baselines that span across all these aspects. So they are like, I will call them like maybe non-negotiables, right? If you say you want to be So that you say that somebody is a CI/CD engineer does not mean that you as a DevOps engineer would not be able to do CI/CD, something like that. Because you would even notice that these days, you would find software engineers deploying the application themselves. Take, for example, there was a startup that reached out to one of my colleagues, and they were like, "Oh, I need you to go." They need him to come and lead the DevOps team. They need him to come and be their DevOps team lead or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, so how many people would he be leading?" And then they were like, "Oh, just him. It's just going to be the one on team." And this is a startup that has already pushed like 2 products out already. So how come you have pushed 2 products out and then you don't have a DevOps team? Right? That's because these days, as much as DevOps engineering is expanding and different things are coming up, software engineering is expanding too. And then to be a good software engineer, you need to be able to deploy your applications, right? And so software engineers, programmers are not just building and then shipping it to the DevOps guy. They are building and deploying. And if as a DevOps engineer, you just want to be mediocre and just say that, oh, my work is just to deploy, then at the end of the day, it's only a matter of time before companies, organizations will not need you as a DevOps engineer in that regard, because their software engineers are now deploying and shipping the applications even more effectively than maybe you would be able to do it, right? So there is a lot of advancement that is going on, and you have to key in, right? If you're going to remain relevant, especially with advent of technologies and tools that look like they are going to take your job, right? Or tools that look like can do these things for you, right? So there are some baselines as whether you're a DevOps engineer or you're a CI/CD engineer or you're a pipeline person or you're a Kubernetes engineer, the basics still remain the same. Your Linux, your networking, your Kubernetes, containerization, and all of these things that you have to know as a DevOps engineer. Those things are non-negotiable. It's just that there are different aspects to which you can know them, different limits to which you can know them, and then you can say, oh, I want to specialize on this, or oh, I want to be in the general group of, say, DevOps engineers, right? So I'm going to talk about some of the in-demand skills. The first one on my list is DevSecOps. As much as I am speculating that, just saying, oh, I'm a DevOps engineer might not scale beyond 2023, one of the first aspects of DevOps engineering that I feel like is going to transcend time and is going to still be around in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years is DevSecOps engineering, right? And it's very obvious, it's DevOps with security, but then it's not just security as you would know it. There are a lot of things too. It is different if you just put a DevOps engineer and a DevSecOps engineer, someone that knows their onions, and you just put them together. There is a difference, right? That sec that is in the middle is not just there for as far it's a new terminology and people are just adopting it. It's a lot, right? I once worked in an organization that we had the DevOps team, and then there was a security team of DevSecOps engineers. You would think that, is everybody together now? But no, the work they were doing, it was as if where DevOps engineers stop, that's where their work starts. And the little things that you might overlook or you might not pay so much attention to are the nitty-gritty details that they would have to pay attention to, right? So it goes beyond just saying, oh, I want to focus on security. Of course, as a DevOps engineer, you have to have security at the back of your mind and at the back of everything you're doing, right? But then there are some people whose job is to take it up a notch. It's not easy to just say, for example, oh, I want to be able to SSH into this EC2 instance and I want to, keep my keys private and, that should be enough. I mean, if I'm not sharing it with anybody, then it's secure. If you're a seasoned DevSecOps engineer, that's not going to happen. It doesn't matter that the keys are not going to leave your laptop. That is still not appropriate. But those are like the compromises that you're not a SecOps engineer might want to make, that somebody that is seasoned will tell you no, is still a deal breaker, irrespective of whether it's just the key is just going to be sitting on your laptop or not, right? And there are like 3 major aspects that can, define a DevSecOps specialist as you may call it. There is the cloud security, there is application security, and there is data security. Of course, there might be a lot more categories, but these are like the three major ones that I feel like are very, very important, right? There is the cloud security. People just provision AWS instances, sometimes managed instances, and then you just think, oh, because it's managed, then it's fine. It's secure, but in most cases, it's not. There's still that extra security that you need to put in place, right? And to be honest, with the way the DevOps industry is growing, right, there are so many tools to keep up with. And to be fair, as much as you're keeping up with all of this and keeping up with all the changes in security might be a lot. That's why there are people whose trajectory is to focus on security as a whole, right? Except if you want to go into that, that aspect, right? Because there are so many nitty-gritty details that you cannot leave out. So there is a cloud security. Even though you're provisioning on AWS, does not mean out of the box it is secure, right? There's still so many things that you need to do about it. Now, application security as well. The fact that your programmers have written the code does not mean that you just take that code as it is and deploy it to your secure cloud provider. If you've made your cloud very secure and you feel like, okay, this thing like this is very, very secure, nobody can hack it, nobody can break into it, and then the application that you deploy has a lot of loopholes. It's just like you're taking one step forward and you're taking 10 steps backward. So as a DevSecOps engineer, your work does not just stop at the security of your cloud or the security of where you're deploying your application to. Even the application that the engineers are writing, you have to make sure it's secure. So you have to write a lot of security tests to see that, oh, is there any key being exposed here? Okay, are they opening any ports from within the code? Are they outputting maybe credentials, whatever? There are a lot of security tests that you need to write and then automate or test or do whatever it is in your pipeline to make sure that not only is the code, is your cloud secure, your application is also secure, right? And then the last part of that is the data as well. So when this data is being stored, is it being stored in such a way that anybody that has access to your cloud can retrieve this thing, even those that do not need to have access to that data, right? So, of course, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details of everything a DevSecOps engineer is supposed to do, right? But if it's something that interests you, if you feel like you have this need for security and it's something you want to go like in depth into, it's something that you can always look into, right, and read a lot of articles, a lot of publications on the matter, because aside from data security, you have to check your data is encrypted in transit, is encrypted at rest. You are not defaulting on some compliances that you have to have at the back of your mind, right? So that's like the first part. The second part is what I've mentioned before. You say some people are CI/CD engineers, some people are pipeline engineers, some people, or they call them release engineers. Now, these are people that have so much experience with building pipelines. Now, it's not just enough to just say, oh, I want to build a pipeline that will just deploy my application, right? There are so many things that you can package into a pipeline. There are so many, like you would see some pipelines and then you'll be like, what is going on here? You can write maybe a 40 lines pipeline that will just deploy application and it will work perfectly fine. But then when a pipeline engineer is going to work on a similar pipeline, it's going to be a lot more, because they are going to be taking a lot more things into consideration, right? They are going to be adding tests, they are going to be adding links, they are going to be, maybe producing artifacts from within your pipeline, transferring it into maybe another stage. They're going to be very experienced on the different CI/CD tools, right? Because that's their job. They're pipeline engineers. They are automating things, right? They can know they know, like the possibilities that exist with just having pipelines. That's their focus. That's why they're pipeline engineers. So that's another aspect that it doesn't just cut it to say, oh, I'm a DevOps engineer. I can do a bit of security. I can do a bit of pipeline. That's good. That's great. But then in the coming years, maybe not, right? So it's okay to just look at what these aspects are and try to carve a niche for yourself. So that's another aspect. CI/CD engineers, pipeline engineers, or release engineers, as they are fondly called. All right. And it doesn't just stop with just, building effective pipelines. There has to be like constant communication with, teams involved. What do I have here? Feedbacks, automation, testing, incident management, right? Those are the things that the pipeline engineer would have at the back of his mind, right? Another aspect, I said there are 5 that I'm going to be touching on. This is the third one, is ML ops or AI ops. I don't know, it's relatively new. I don't know if so many people have read about it, but it's ML being machine learning operations, and then AI ops being artificial intelligence operations. It's very similar to what you would call data infrastructure engineering, but it's all DevOps, right? Now, machine learning engineers or artificial intelligence people will build their models, and they would want to deploy these models, right? Deploying those models is the work of a DevOps engineer, or a DevOps engineer as we know it. Now, those people that want to focus on, that aspect of DevOps engineering, they are MLOps engineers, because their work is not just to be deploying model. Anybody can learn how to deploy a model, right? But to make sure that your model is able to do everything it can, the model that a machine learning engineer has built is able to do everything it can. It's taking feedbacks as it should, it's doing the predictive analytics, whatever it is that the model is meant to do. That's the work of an MLOps, because there are so many factors that you have to take into consideration, right? So I just want to read what I wrote. I said, like, an MLOps person would automate repetitive tasks. So aside from just, helping machine learning engineers or AI engineers to just deploy the application, as an MLOps engineer, you have to look at, okay, the world is advancing. There are so many models that are coming up now. How can these models help me automate my tasks as a DevOps engineer, right? What can I pick from these things? What can I learn from ML that can help me automate repetitive tasks? It's not enough to just say, oh, I just want to write a bash script that would automate my task. It's not going to cut it anymore. Not with all these tools and technologies that keep coming up on a daily basis, right? And when people essentially say that, oh, this tool is going to take your job as a DevOps engineer, what they're essentially saying is that things that would need manual effort, things that would need manual interference, these tools can do them automatically, taking out everything manual there is to it, right? And so if there are tools that are coming up that can do what you would do manually, why not you try to introduce those things into your day-to-day operations as a DevOps engineer, right? So your repetitive tasks, do it with machine learning. I'm not saying go and learn how to be a machine learning engineer, but you can leverage some things from there, like machine learning predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is such that they take maybe a job that has been run previously, or jobs that have been run previously, and they try to say, oh, this is what is breaking this application. Okay, now we can predict when next a break is going to occur. And as a DevOps engineer, how that applies to you is, okay, let's say you've done your observability, right? You have your logs, you have your dashboards, you can see what the CPU utilization is, you can see all those beautiful metrics. Now you can see those metrics, you're probably pushing them into a storage bucket, but then what do you do with that data? It's just there, sitting there, right? As an MLOps engineer, right, your work is, you now take that data and then try to do some predictive analytics on it and say, okay, from this data, I can see that maybe the CPU always spikes at 9 p.m. every day. And then, okay, I see that the CPU spikes at 9 p.m. every day. Okay, what can I do to make this better? And then you can say, oh, okay, I'm going to maybe add some auto scaling to say that 9 p.m. every day, scale up my servers, and then let me have, more servers, things like that, you get. And that's the work of an MLOps engineer. So you're taking feedback from your past logs that you have built, dashboards that you have built. You're taking those feedbacks and then you're making your work better. All right. That's like what an MLOps engineer is going to do. And then the last two that I want to talk about is like Kubernetes engineer and then blockchain DevOps engineers. And I think that they're a bit self-explanatory. Like for Kubernetes engineers now, in this case, there are so many things that you can do on Kubernetes that goes beyond just deploying applications, right? It could go as high as, writing custom plugins for Kubernetes itself. Don't forget that Kubernetes was built, right? So your work can go beyond just, deploying applications into Kubernetes itself and building custom plugins and, and all of that. So that's one of the things that a Kubernetes engineer can do, as well as, optimizing our applications that are deployed on Kubernetes. By applications now, I don't mean like the code you are trying to deploy. I'm talking about maybe tools that can make the code better, like GitOps, putting in a bit of GitOps into your infrastructure and everything, right? That's what a Kubernetes engineer would focus on. And then the last thing I have on my list is blockchain DevOps engineers, right? There has been a lot of a rise in, Web3, crypto, and all of that. And they need DevOps engineers to deploy these nodes. You have a lot of nodes, you want to deploy validation nodes, you want to deploy, RPC nodes, whatever the case may be, right? And you need DevOps engineers to be able to deploy these things. Now, DevOps engineers that would specialize in that, because there is a lot of learning that needs to be done. You need to learn about, different crypto. You need to learn about maybe the Ethereum, Polygon, and the likes. There is a lot of learning that goes into it. Now, for somebody that wants to say, oh, I want to focus on, this aspect of DevOps engineering, that's who you would call a blockchain DevOps engineer. And we're going to be seeing a rise in that in coming years, right? So yeah, those are the 5 aspects that I have on my list. There are definitely a lot more, but I can't talk about all of them now. It's just to show you that there are a lot more possibilities when you want to say, oh, I'm a DevOps engineer, right? Engineer rather. There are a lot more possibilities. It's not just enough to just say, oh, I'm a DevOps engineer. In the coming years, you're going to have to carve a niche for yourself, right? Because all these things are coming up. Organizations would want people that they know that, okay, this person has enough experience to be able to work on this specific niche that I want. Oh, I want somebody to build robust pipelines for me, right? I want somebody to build robust pipelines. They would not just get somebody that just said, because it will get to a point where DevOps engineer will be like, like, I can do everything. And that's not going to work. It's like people saying they are full stack engineers. I'm not saying there are no full stack engineers, but I feel like we're getting to a point where a company will rather say, oh, I want a front end engineer that will focus on doing front end, and I want a back end engineer that will focus on doing back end, instead of getting one person that says he's a full stack and says he can do everything, right? So that's what that's the tea with the different aspects of DevOps. And lastly, before we round this up, people that are trying to break into the market, I would say that because I believe that on here we have a lot of people, a lot of seniors, and as well as a lot of people that are just trying to break into the market as well. People that you say, oh, I've been learning a lot. How do I get my first gig? And I have just 3 things to say about that. The first thing majorly is learn. You would see people that would say, oh, please refer me for this role. Oh, my company is hiring, and I would like to put someone forward. And then you refer this person, and what you think they know, they don't, right? So that has like stopped a lot of people from, saying that, oh, my company has this opening available and all of that. So I would say that, firstly, you need to learn and be sure that you know what you know. Learn a lot. There are, especially with everything that I've said, with all these new aspects coming up, there is nearly enough things that you can learn, right? Just learn, keep learning, learn a lot, right? That's the first thing. And when you feel like, oh, I've learned a lot, and I feel like I'm ready for my first job, or I'm ready for, the first gig, then you can now say, oh, okay, maybe what can I do? How can I put myself out there? It's not enough to just sit in your house and learn. People need to know what you're doing, right? People need to be able to see that, okay, when you talk about DevOps, you should think of this person. When you talk about DevOps, you should think of, XYZ, all right? It would help to maybe get some certifications, because if you want to prove to a company that what they need, or you have what they need, one easy way, I'm not saying that a certification now is proof of knowledge, but one easy way that will set you apart and let the company know for sure that, okay, it seems like this person has an idea of maybe observability, is if you come and say, oh, I know enough of observability, and I've gone to get this certification that shows that, I know enough. That's not to say that, a lot of people don't find dubious, fraudulent ways around this, right? But largely, it will set you apart. So when you feel like you've learned enough, if you can afford it, because some of these certificates are expensive as well, if you can get some certifications, it will help. It will set you apart. You'll be able to put it out there and people will know that, okay, this person is doing something right and this person has a skill that I need or something, or a skill in demand, right? And then lastly, build, collaborate, write, be involved in communities. Localhost is a great community that you can start. There are a lot of people here, like I said, from seniors to juniors to mid-levels, to CEOs in the community. And if you belong to a community like that, I'm not saying Localhost is the only one, but if you belong to a community like that, it would help people notice you. And people will see that, okay, this person has been showing up for meetups, this person has been showing up for office hours. Okay, I think this person has a nick for DevOps engineering, and it can help if there are openings or opportunities that come your way that way. And that's not to say build, collaborate as well, right? Contribute to open source if you can. It's not easy, definitely, but if you can contribute to these things, just put yourself out there. You learn something new, tweet about it, post on LinkedIn about it, write an article if you can. If you feel like you have enough subject matter expert on that thing, you're a subject matter expert rather on that subject, write an article if you can, post it, and do all these things, and it will help. So basically, that's all I have for today's chat. So please, if you have any questions, any comments, you don't agree with anything I said, that's fine. Let's talk about it. Yeah, so I think the floor is open now for anybody that wants to share.
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, so like 2 minutes ago, you said if we're starting out in DevOps, one thing to do is learn. But you didn't mention how we can learn, or are there platforms? Because there are a lot of tools and technologies to learn when it comes to DevOps. Is there a platform? Is there where we can go to just start afresh and see what to learn and would the best way to go about it?
Okay. So I would say that it would be cool to follow a learning path. Not even it would be cool, you have to follow a learning path, because you can't just say, oh, I want to start with Linux and just go, okay, after Linux, what next? So I would say that follow a learning path. I know there is this, I think, roadmap.sh that helps, but it can be very cumbersome for somebody that is just starting out, right? I would recommend Code Cloud, KODEKLOUD, Code Cloud, but instead of CK, they have a learning path for DevOps, and I think it's really good. It's not so expensive. You subscribe for, I think, I don't know the amount now, but it's not so expensive and it's really good. They have a learning path where you go from, Linux to all the way to containerization, Kubernetes, and then they even have a track that helps you get certifications as well, like take courses for certification. So I would say maybe consider Code Cloud, because they are not just giving you a list of things to learn. There are tutorials that you can use, and at the end of the day, you can get certifications as well. So I would say Code Cloud is definitely a good way to start. I'm sure there are a lot more. I know there is a Cloud Guru as well. So there are definitely a lot more, but one that I know that I've recommended time and time again for people trying to start is Code Cloud. So I would definitely recommend that.
All right, thanks. I hope that will be able to help at least one person on the call that wants to start out. Thank you.
Thanks, Idol. Hi, Shalom.
Hello, good day. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi.
Hi, good day. Thank you very much for the insight you've shared. So basically, my question is geared towards MLOps engineering basically, and then blockchain engineering. So you see, these two fields are quite specific, like you mentioned. So if one is actually to guess his niche, that is either MLOps or MLOps or any other branch of DevOps. Basically, is it required for an individual, or maybe blockchain, DevOps? Is it important for the person to go through the fundamentals of this specific technologies, basically? Because I know, being a DevOps engineer, you need to actually understand how applications are being deployed. So in terms of blockchain, do you need to understand fundamentals of blockchain? In terms of MLOps engineering, you need to understand fundamentals of machine learning, deep learning, basically. So I just want to know how it's going to be. How do you separate these things basically from the normal DevOps engineer in terms of your learning roadmap, basically?
Yeah, so I would say that if you're going to be a seasoned MLOps engineer or a seasoned blockchain engineer, you need to know the basics. Now, when I say know the basics, I don't say that, let's say for blockchain DevOps engineering now, I don't say that you need to know maybe how to write smart contracts or you need to know how to code in maybe Kotlin or whatever programming language they use. I'm not saying you have to learn that programming language, but you need to understand the basics of what is going on under the hood. It's not enough to just say, I want to write, my infrastructure as code to deploy, these nodes and make sure they are scalable. You need to know what is happening inside those nodes, how everything pieces together to have, that fully functional application that you can say, oh, I deployed this. So it would, I don't think it's even negotiable. I think you need to know details of what you're doing if you're going to be a seasoned engineer. So MLOps as well. I'm not saying you should be able to build a model. If you can, great, right? I'm not saying you should be able to build a model, but you should be able to know what machine learning is all about. When they say they are building a model, you need to understand what goes into building a model, right? So that when you want to, do some predictive analytics yourself to say that, okay, this data that I have in Datadog, I want to be able to extract that data and make some, insights out of it. You need to be able to know what that entails, right? When you know those details, then you will be able to make recommendations and say that, okay, I think maybe if a new technology comes up now, you can say, okay, I think this would address this problem we've always had with deploying nodes or something. All right, so I'll say definitely it's not negotiable. You need to know the basics, the fundamentals of how everything pieces together under the hood. I hope
All
that's
right, thank you very much. Yeah, just thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Does anybody have any other questions? Bethel.
Okay. Hello. Oh, shit.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It was breaking a bit.
All right. Thank you for your presentations. And during the course of your presentation, you mentioned internships and your companies and how they received interns. I'm quite curious about that because right here, you actually look for a lot of companies and you hardly see a company here that accepts internship or worst case DevOps interns. Mostly they'll just tell you DevOps interns, and when you open it, you see you need 3 years of experience to be a DevOps intern here. It's quite difficult to navigate that. I don't know if you have like suggestions.
So I won't say that what you said is not true, but at the same time, so there are quite a few companies that would say that, okay, you need to be if you're coming as an intern, you don't have to have any experience. There are quite a few companies. But these days, with the way, okay, just look at what is happening with layoffs. A lot of companies are laying off people. Now, these people that worked at these top companies, Meta, Google, all these big companies, they're out on the streets looking for the same jobs that you are looking for. Now, what do you think would set you apart? And bear in mind that some of these people, they have families to fend for. So even though maybe if they're earning $100,000 at their previous companies, some of them might even want to settle for a job that pays maybe $40,000. Now, I'm not saying that's normal, that's the norm. I'm just saying some of them might want to settle. Now, if you, as an intern, or maybe someone with maybe less than 3 years experience, is applying for the same job that someone that has 6 years experience is applying for, if you're the company, would you think you will go for? Definitely you will go for someone that has more experience for the same amount, which is why I said, nobody even says you need to start with an internship. That's just the truth. You don't have to, right? But then you need to set yourself apart. You need to make sure that, okay, even though you don't have 3 years experience or you don't have 6 years experience, right? Something has to set you apart from the average person that is also looking for the same job you're looking for, right? That's why I said that you need to learn a lot. Now, when I say learn, I'm not saying have a plan that you will learn for 6 months and then in 6 months you should be looking for jobs that will pay you in USD. That's not the plan. Learn. Like, it might take a while, it might take 1 year. That's just the truth. It might take 2 years, right? But then learn. It can be earlier, right? I'm not saying that that's the standard time. It can be earlier as well. But when you take your own time to learn and you know that, okay, I've learned this thing, I think I'm ready for a job. Or I think that's not to say that you will not be applying on the side as well. But then learn, contribute, be part of a community, let people know you, let people see you, write articles if you can, contribute to open source if you can, build anything if you can, right? Those are the little things that will set you apart from an average intern that does not have any experience and is coming for the same job that you want. So even the previous companies that I worked for that I said used to hire interns, when we call for interns, we'll get like a lot of responses, hundreds of responses. Now, those 100 responses, we still have to filter down. Guess what we'll filter by? Those that have a bit of experience, those that have done things that even though it's an internship, we're not going to teach you from the basics. We expect you to know some things, right? So you don't even have to start with an internship role. That's just true. Just learn enough. And when you feel like you've learned enough, you've done all of these things, then apply for roles, whether internship or not, whether junior roles, whether mid-level. Apply. If you have the knowledge base and you have what the company needs, why not?
All right, thank you. I think that's quite clear.
You're welcome. Any other questions, anybody? I think that's all. Does anybody want to say anything, wants to add to, what the conversation is? Maybe not questions, maybe just suggestions. Yeah, Joe, please go.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Thanks for the presentation, much appreciated. So my question is regards to, a lot of times you have to have projects you worked on when you apply for roles, and that's one of the things they look for in your CV. And oftentimes I realize that when you work on a DevOps project yourself or with maybe a friend, you don't get to work on, production level kind of projects. And sometimes when you go into conversations on interviews like some I've had, they ask some questions that if you have not worked on actual production level projects, you may not be able to answer them. So I don't know, my question is regards to if you have suggestions as to projects that one can try his hands on that will at least give, to some extent, something close to something production level, even if it requires having a team or a couple of friends that also work on it.
So I would say that my first question is, if you're trying to build something with your friend, what is stopping you from making it production level in the first place?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, there are projects that I know I'm currently working on that we're trying to get to production. I have an idea of some of those things I can do. I'm just saying if I know I've seen some, for example, I know a guy on LinkedIn that talks about DevOps the hard way. He has some sort of projects like that. I'm just actually seeking for more of such projects if you have some ideas.
Well, I would say that if you have projects you're working on, just do them excellently and talk about them. To be honest, I don't think you can, if something is not going to be used in production, and I'm guessing by production here, you mean, a lot of users using your product and everything. There is no way you can simulate that if you're just going to be building, like if you're just building for learning purposes, there is no way you can simulate the production on it, right? Of course, except if you maybe want to put load on it, you want to add users and try to simulate, if your application will crack, if you have a lot more people. Of course, you can do all of that. But I feel like if you're learning and you're trying to build just to boost your portfolio, the best you can do is you build this, write a very detailed documentation about it, put it out there, let people know what your application can do. You yourself that built it, know the limits of your application, that, okay, this thing can currently, based on this customization or this whatever, it can currently serve 20 users per second. You as a DevOps engineer should be able to come up with those metrics. And then when you do, you know the limitations of your application, and then you can work on it better. So even though you don't have production workload or you don't have production experience, when you talk about those things, it makes the interviewer aware that you know what you're saying, you know what you would do if these were to be real users, not simulated users. So I won't say that, there is one particular project that you need to do that will give you production. I would just say that the one you're doing, just keep at it and then make it big. I hope that answers you to an extent. Okay, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah,
No,
I want to add something to what you said. When it comes to building production experience as a DevOps engineer, you have to understand that it's a little bit different between a DevOps engineer and a software engineer, because for DevOps engineering, if you are thinking about production experience, you are already talking about cost, right? And the cost of learning can be very, very expensive, especially if you don't have the full context on what you're doing, say on AWS or any cloud provider. Personally, for me, the advice I would give to you is worry less about production experience if you're starting in DevOps, right? Worry about understanding tools, understanding fundamentals. For instance, understanding fundamentals of networking, understanding the fundamentals of Kubernetes, for instance, understanding the fundamentals of CI/CD and things like that, right? Understand it, play around with these tools, read more about it, read people's posts about it, be involved in the community, ask questions, answer questions, talk about it on Twitter. Just keep learning, like Praise already said, right? And with that passion, right, you could apply for internship roles. And I don't think most internship roles that at least I have come across require you to have production experience. However, they require you to have experience in tools that they use, right? It doesn't have to be the exact tool. If you have experience with CI/CD, right, and a company is using GitLab CI as their CI/CD tool, but you have played around with Jenkins, if you understand the fundamentals of CI/CD, you should be able to transfer your knowledge of Jenkins to GitLab CI, right? I don't think we should, if you are looking for an internship role, yes, having production experience is key, is good, but because of the cost that comes with that securing production experience in DevOps, I don't think it's a hard requirement. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Mojisola, can you ask your question, and then Godstime ask your question as well, so we can round up real quick.
Okay, hi, Paris and everyone. It's not a question. I just like to make a quick contribution. Okay. So, I didn't join from the beginning, so like, well done on the presentation. But the part I had and I wanted to weigh in was the last person who asked the question. He said that are there specific sites or specific platforms where you can have like hands-on experience or kind of get your hands dirty? So I would recommend you can go to Code Cloud. They have an engineering aspect, not the paid platform. There's a paid platform that like teaches you a lot of about a lot of DevOps tools to get and methodologies. But there's another part that gives you like, I won't say production, but like a complaint, so they like tell you write a bash script to do this, write a YAML file to do that, and all. So if you are looking for a platform to get your hands dirty, just Google Code Cloud Engineering. I'm using my mobile phone, so let me see if I can try to type it here. Then you try to Google it and find your way around it. So yeah, that was what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Moji. Yeah. Godstime, can you go next, please? After Taiwo, I don't think we'll be taking any more questions, suggestions, please, if that's okay, Favor. So Godstime, please go next.
Yeah, can you hear me? Good evening. Thank you for awesome presentation. Yeah, I think Mojisola just said what I wanted to say. I'm a Code Cloud ambassador, so I want to talk about Code Cloud. So Code Cloud, you can do that engineering, Code Cloud engineering. It gives you real life field of DevOps. Then Code Cloud is cheap. You can have a $5 account and then be using it. Yeah, so for the other guy that was asking about production experience, I actually don't think like if you are a DevOps engineer, your base is to actually have application in production. So you are not learning to build a development application or a production application. I think the best way to go, if you have like a React app, first of all, you learn how to work that on an EC2 or a bare metal server. Then you learn Docker. From there, you Dockerize that same app. Then you learn Lambda or functions. Then you turn that app to functions, and then you run them on Kubernetes. Yeah, and then just try to make them work. I think basically all cloud platforms have free services that you can start with when you're starting. I think I don't actually agree with the expensive nature of that stuff. And the other guy mentioned, I've been a cloud engineer, and all my exams and all the practices I've never used my money. I've been chopping AWS credit. So you just have to join communities, look for informations. Yeah, you can get $500 credit, $1,000 credits for AWS from other cloud platform, from Google. There's quick labs that you can use. Yeah, it's actually free. It's actually learning and studying cloud is cheap. It's not that expensive. It's very, very cheap. When your application is ready, if you want to test with live users, do load testing, use locals or cases, other stuff. Yeah, that's basically what I want to say. I had to emphasize on that code cloud. Code cloud is cheap. And then you can't. And thank you.
But I think that's a very slopey slope. You can't say cloud is cheap. Yeah, it's good if you have AWS credits, right? But not everybody will have access to, these things. And I'm not saying that these things are not easy to be gotten, but for somebody that is just coming into cloud, that doesn't know, what a free tier is, that doesn't know, AWS is going to bill me per hour on this instance. Oh, I need to shut this instance down. That's a very slippery slope, right? And so I would not say it's a blanket approach of it's cheap. It's not, definitely not. Of course, there are limits to what people can do, right? And so maybe all the things you've done are cheap and, your AWS credits can cover it. But there are some services that your free tier or your AWS credit, well, I don't know if AWS credits will cover it, but there's some services that your free tier would not cover. So for somebody that is just starting into cloud, please be very, very careful with what you do on the cloud. If you don't have enough experience on what the charges are or how much it's going to cost, please, it's very, very expensive. Of course, if you can get credits, please go ahead, all good, right? But still, you have to be able to manage it. If not, you get 1,000 credits and then you burn it out by just leaving an EBS volume running, right? So please be very careful about that. Taiwo.
Thank you, Praise. I just wanted to share with us how you're able to manage your time efficiently, considering that while you're already in the industry, you have a lot of meetings to meet up with, you have a lot of tasks to deliver, your deliverables, you have to write documentation, like this, you have a lot of stuff to work on. I don't know, how are you able to meet up with your targets at work, and how do you incorporate your self-learning, like the journey? If you can just share briefly, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think like with everything else that life is, you just have to find a way to make it work for you, right? So of course you would have tasks at the office, but I feel like most offices, let me not generalize here, but there are some offices that still give you allowance for, maybe take 3 hours weekly for self-learning. But even if your office does not have it, that's fine. You have the weekends. Your work is ideally 8 hours, right? Let's even say you have to work all 8 hours, right? After working 8 hours, if there are things you're learning or certifications you're preparing for, you just have to make it work, right? If it means that extra 1 hour every day or that extra 2 hours every weekend, everything will still add up at the end of the day. It's better than doing nothing. So if you're working a full-time job or you're working multiple jobs and you want to be able to incorporate self-learning, you just have to make time, for these things. It could be, oh, I'm too busy during the week, and then on the weekends, I put in maybe 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday. Those 8 hours that you've put in during the weekend, at the end of the month, everything is going to add up. Those things that you've learned in that period are going to stay with you. So you just have to make it work. We all have the same 24 hours, right? But then you just have to look at, the peculiarities of what your day-to-day is like, what your office requires of you to make sure you're not slacking on your job as well. And then just look at how best to manage everything. To be honest, there is no formula or anything that will say, oh, you have to, wake up at 2 a.m. to do this. You just have to make it work, because you don't want to be mediocre at your job. You don't want to be mediocre. That's just summary. So you have to make sure that you make out time to learn, to improve yourself at every point, and just to be good at what you do, basically. Yeah. Okay. So I think I hope that answered your question, and thank you everybody for having me. I hope that we've learned 1 or 2 things, and please, you can always join the community. You can send me a message if you have any questions or something that we can't take now. That's perfectly fine. Thank you so much, everybody.